Hello, people. I got a new chair. It doesn't have armrests, so I don't know what's gonna happen. Anything could actually happen. I don't realize how often I use the armrest till they're not there. You know, free? Am I free, or am I deficient now? I don't know. Anyways, see if I can focus. This week, I'm gonna be talking about. Maybe I'll just put my hands on my desk. No, that'll be weird. That'll be weird. Howl's Moving Castle. I should have wrote this lady's name down. Maybe I'll put a picture of her up or something. I don't know why I keep forgetting to put the author's names down when I'm writing my notes. Howl's Moving Castle. Now, I originally heard about this from the anime, from the Ghibli Studio anime. I saw that movie. It's a tremendous movie. Recommend it to anyone. But I did not know it was a book first. So when I saw this on the Kindle Unlimited, I decided, let's give it a shot. It's not terribly long. It takes me forever for anything anyway because I'm a slow reader, but it isn't terribly long. But I have to say, this book is fantastic, people. It is 100% a 5 out of 5. I would say anyone, at any level, at any interest level even, could read this book and enjoy it. Nothing about it's going to be difficult, right? The language, right? The verbiage. Some books can get sort of high end on themselves. This isn't that at all, but it's more like Alice in Wonderland, where you can tell that all the word choices are just that. They're a choice. This lady could have written it. She could have written this story, I think, any way she wanted. Very intense, laid back. However she wanted to do it. She specifically chose this way. You could tell. It's fantastical. It's whimsical. It has its own internal seriousness. So it's not flippant with itself or with the reader by extension. It's light, it's airy, it's full of life. It is a tremendous story. I saw the movie a while ago, right? And it has a lot of the sentiments of a Ghibli film, if that makes sense. But throughout the whole book. And I think I'll remember more details of this book than I do of the movie. If that's any standard you want to use to go on. I do rate the movie very highly, and I'm putting the book right up there with anything. It's really that good. Now, let's sort of get into some of what happens. I say some because it's very interconnected, right? So if I say someone cleaned a cupboard, it's not really a big deal in and of itself. But pieced into the flow of a type of a story like this, it means more than it is. So I can't give you too many details and then mean anything to you. I could tell you all the bits around it, but you might as well just read the book then. It's one of those type of stories. It's almost too much sometimes, where too much is happening, but you never lose track, which is pretty difficult to do. Okay, we start with three sisters. You start with one talking about her other sisters, but there are three sisters in total. A Sophie, a Letty, and a Martha Hatter. Their dad was a hatter, so they're named Hatter. They make hats. Right? Well, the Hatter Senior, the dad, he dies. Don't know how. but we got to move on with our lives, right? He doesn't harp on the death a lot. Don't know how he died. And it's the mom trying to place her kids somewhere. So she finds a shop for one and a magical apprentice for the other. And she's just going to keep the one, Sophie, with her and then pass the business on to her. And at some point, Sophie kind of takes it sideways. Like, I think I'm just being worked unnecessarily. Right? So she has that in her head. She thinks she's sort of being misused by her mom. She's not happy about it. She likes to talk to the objects, right? Sort of like, it's like you have a pen. You're like, come on, dude, think of an idea. And then, you sort of talk like that to your items. She does this throughout. I tend to do that a lot as well. I'm sure other people do. I'm just saying me. Where you get a sense of a loyalty to objects in a weird roundabout way, right? Like, this pen helped me, pass the test. It's a lucky pen. Or I wore this one watch and lucky things happened. It's a lucky watch. This kind of thing, right? I get these sort of sentimental about objects sometimes. And she does it throughout the book as well. And our author uses that like to imbue magical properties, which is a fun little element. In any case, she's talking to some of the hats, and one day a fancy lady comes in, and she doesn't like her by looking, right? Just that's all you need to know. Our Sophie doesn't like her just by looking at her. She's sort of stuck up. She asks some questions, and then she puts a curse on her. She's the Witch of the Waste. Puts a curse on our poor Sophie. Makes her instantly old. Pretty rough curse. But it's everything, right? Everything about this book is what it happens like right here. The way you think things should be taken isn't always how it's taken. And that sets a tone that we don't lose, right? I think Alice in Wonderland comes to mind when she's falling down that big hole, right? Where you would think, you could write that as terrifying to fall to your death. But at some point, Alice is like, yeah, this is a bit of an inconvenience. To brush off certain things like this. I'm trying to think of what that is. That whimsy, that's what I say. It's just a particular type of tone. Mythological? I wouldn't say mythological. Myths take themselves very seriously. But it said it's hard to describe. That someone can take... some people take things too seriously all the time anyway. And then you meet some people who are just real easygoing about things, even sort of serious things. And you sort of sometimes tend to like to be around them. You like that they don't get over anxious about everything. Youthful. Childlike, right? Where the child is still serious about, I saw a grasshopper, or what is that? It's a tree. What's a tree? They're serious, but not, it doesn't hamper them. I think that's what it is. There's a freedom to this, right? So she gets turned old like this. And, obviously she's like, I don't like this Witch of the Waste. This isn't appropriate. Turn people old. That's not right. But then she just sort of like becomes an old lady in her head. Right? So she's like, oh, well, I guess I'm old now, and I guess I better walk like this. I still feel pretty good about it. And then she'll run too fast and like, oh, there's the age hitting me. I can't run up hills like that no more. So she's old, and she's just like, well, I didn't want to sort of be in the shop anyway. I can't have everyone seeing me old, especially since I can't tell them I'm cursed. I better just move on, make my way in the world. And she just starts to act like an old lady. What is it old people do? When they're very old, they lose all of the sort of things that were hampering them, right? An old person will just say what's on their mind. They'll just push their way into a line. They're just like, well, I'm eating these chips on this corner. You can't just eat on the corner. It's against the rules. I'm like, I don't care about rules. I'm 85. And they just sort of move about in the world in any way they want. She starts to do this. Um, she'll push her way into a situation, and then remember in her head, like, oh man, when I was young, I would have never done this. It would have been too. I would have been. It would have been seen as rude. I don't want to be rude, but I guess because I'm old, I can do this. She sort of gets a matter of factness about it. It's so endearing through the whole rest of the book. She doesn't. She knows. She's like, okay, I don't want to be old. I'd like to find a way to fix it. But I'm not sure what I can do against the Witch of the Waste. I'm not actually a witch. So, there's no good complaining about it. Just got to move along. She makes her way out of town. I think she thought she'd get I think she thought she'd get further than she got, which was just barely out of town. But it's gonna get cold. And she got nowhere to sleep, so she decides there's Howl's moving castle. Let me go in there. It's not like he could do anything to me anyway, because everyone thinks he eats little girls. That's what they think. He's just like this evil wizard. But she's like, well, I'm old now, so I'm in no danger. The castle, again, the castle's sort of a character on its own. It's this big, misshapen, ugly thing, puffing smoke, running around on legs, all over the hills. Has multiple doors, but some of them have like force fields, some she can't get in. But she doesn't give up. Tenacious. So she finds her way into this castle. Again, she barges in because she's an old lady now, and they don't have to, they can be a little rude. It's not a big deal. She barges in, and then she stays there. She meets Michael, a young guy. I think he's like 15. Sort of a kid. That's the magician's apprentice, Howl's assistant. He's Howl's apprentice. And she meets a fire demon. That's what they call it. And I noticed this sort of making up my notes, but early on, we say fire demon. The fire demon said. She turned to the fire demon. This kind of verbiage. A lot. Whereas later, it's just his name. Calcifer. It's a cool name. He's the fire. He's a fire in the fireplace. Has eyes, can talk. She meets a fire demon. And of course, again, very matter of fact. She's antagonistic towards it a little bit. But it's like, I shouldn't be friends with a demon. They're demons. And it's a witty book too. She'll be saying things like, yeah, I wouldn't trust a fire demon. They don't have a heart. And then he'll be in the back like, well, I have a heart. But no one will hear that. Just this back and forth. Not back and forth. It's ancillary conversations can happen. This kind of thing. These jibes flying. There's one point where he's stuck in a contract with Howl the Wizard. And she goes, don't you get anything out of this contract? He says, I wouldn't have got into it if I didn't. Right? So it's this subtle witticisms, snark. Everyone's sharp. They just flow all over the book. In any case, he says, I can get that curse off of you if you'll get the curse off of me. She's like, how do I do that? He's like, it's like your curse. I can't tell you anything about it. So he says, I'll try and drop hints, but I can't tell you. But you have to get the curse off for me to save you. So she's like, I'll stay here. A fire demon can save me. Even though it's probably a risk. Then our Wizard Howl shows up. It's just a tour. What did they say? A tour de force. This character. In my head, he's like, if someone were able to mash Gandalf and Sherlock Holmes into one. That's what this sort of character is. It's dynamic. He jumps off the page. It's very memorable. He's like a wizard should. He's constantly on the move. Constantly doing this or that. He doesn't get fazed by problems. He's very smart, very sharp, well dressed, seemingly vain, seemingly dismissive of people, but then not, right? He extra all the time. I think one time he gets annoyed or angry or something and just blows green slime all over the place until he's like encased in it and he just won't come out until they drag him to a bathroom. There's one time they're trying to make a suit for him and they put powder on it to make it grow. It grows instead of like him size from tiny to him size, it grows like 2 miles long. And he wakes up with the suit on, which is just length over length on him. But he's not like, what the crap is going on? Who did this to me? He just rolls with it like this is a normal Tuesday. Walks himself into the bathroom, hauling all this extra material in. There's one time when he's a cat. He's like, he got into a fight with the Witch of the Waste. He's a cat. And instead of just transforming out of a cat to sit in the chair, he stays the cat so he can be more dramatic crawling up into the chair because he's tired. And then he slowly becomes a human and then just is exhausted in the chair. Right? Just extra for no reason. Dramatic for no reason. Can be menacing but never is. You know, like again, like a Gandalf. Like a Sherlock Holmes. It's a weird thing. And it sounds weird, but I mean, he really is like this. You never know what's going to happen when he shows up. You're sure he can fix problems. Our Sophie doesn't trust him for the longest time. He's one of the funnest characters I've ever read. One time he has a cold. Right? And she's annoyed. Sophie's annoyed because he's clearly sneezing as loud as possible on purpose, right? And he's a wizard, so he's making the walls shake and stuff. And then when she goes to check on him, he's like, "Yeah, I'm dying of boredom." He's one of the funnest characters I've ever read. In the story, he's getting the girls around to love him, and the moment they love him, he drops them. That's what he keeps doing. And Sophie doesn't like this, right? She's like, you shouldn't do this. The Witch of the Waste also has a curse on him because she's trying to get him, actually. So half the book is this and half the book is that. We end up with a kind of we end up with building a very subtle. You don't see sort of when it actually turns. But it goes from sort of like, I'm annoyed all the time by him to clearly a love story, right? And it's a solid, I'm trying to help him, I'll let the bird go, if it comes back it loves me, kind of a love story. It's a very solid one. Again, endearing. It's a very endearing book. Whimsical. But there are... The Witch of the Waste is pretty evil. She's killed one person at least. That's another thing. The magic. The magic is very magical in the book. It's not trying to half explain. This isn't like, oh, it's my magic's actually science. No, this is full blown magic. I can have 7-league boots, and every step is 7 leagues in any direction. I can jump around. Wizards can turn themselves into pillars of cloud or fire or smoke or birds. You know, he has doors that lead to different parts of the world. Right? So outside the castle's a hodgepodge, but inside's actually fairly small. It's like 3 rooms. And the doors are randomly placed, and depending on which way you turn them, you can just go all over the world. Who knows, to any kind of kingdom. Very, very magical. And it's not just like I wave a wand. He writes spells up. He grinds powders. He can sell you that powder and you can do something. Our Sophie ends up developing, which is another thing that I like. And then you don't have to explain it, but you have in these type of stories where you're like, well, what's the wizard's training? And it's always random stuff, right? Go make this, go run there, bring me water, you know. And just being around the wizard, looking over his shoulder, you just start to develop your own magical abilities. Right? And we don't really like, oh, well, he's not born with, I don't have to worry about bloodlines or born with magic or my dad's this or that. You know, it's just the effort you put in to be around him. You just start picking up magic on your own. And it's just not really questioned. This happens sort of in this book. I really like it. You're just hanging around Howl. You just start picking up magic on your own. Now, he says you always had the magic, obviously. That's how we do in these sort of fable type stories. But you will go from sort of we're just walking along town or we're cleaning or something small like this to the witch found me and now we're having this massive wizard fight, which goes like you think it should. Massive waves, clouds rolling, they turn into like what is it, like a giant phoenix and a dragon or something to this effect. They're chasing each other around. There's mermaids showing up. It gets wild. The battle gets wild. And then right back to just Howl being extra. And you never even you care. You care, but you do have a sense it's all going to work out because the story's not the type. It's like it's not going to be this whimsical and turn into Romeo and Juliet and then everyone dying or something like this, right? It's not. It doesn't end like Reservoir Dogs. Just a bunch of bodies. It stays whimsical. It knows what it is. It stays there. But it doesn't lessen your caring. You don't want to see these people lose. You want things to work out for the people in this story. You start to like each of them. You like the fire demon. You like Sophie. You like Howl. You like all of them. The apprentice. We end up with these odd love triangles. It's very fun. Sort of you get a bit of an end battle where not an end battle per se. It's one of these stories where as you go it makes more threads and in the end all the threads do tie themselves up. Let me see if I forgot anything because this video is kind of short. No. I didn't really forget anything. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I don't really see how I can viably do that. It's not a details-driven story. But it is fun. And it's short, so if you want a quick read, you can grab this. And since it's so short, you could do, again, this isn't an ad. This isn't my ad. My ads are later. I don't get any money off of this. But it is on Kindle Unlimited right now. So if you grab that for whatever, $4, read this book, 3 or 4 others, and then cancel it, you did yourself a good service. All right, people. I'm glad it's kind of short because it's hot in Texas. But I'm going to run my ads now. Whew. You know how hot it is in Texas? I looked at the thermometer. It literally said, I'm not lying. Said it's 10,000 degrees outside. Actually, 10,000 degrees. But college football is just about to start, so I do not care. These are my books, by the way. These aren't Kindle. Well, I think they're on Kindle Unlimited, so, you could read all these while you read Howl's Moving Castle in probably a month. I don't know how fast you read. And get great value all around. But these are my books, so if you buy them, just know that I get money. And with that money, I don't know, I'll do stuff. You know what I'll do? I'll buy more books. Okay, people. Good looking out. I will see you lovely lot next week.